Nerd On the Podcast is proudly partnered with Apogee Electronics and Odyssey Headphones, leaders in the field of audio.
It has to happen when it happens.
Waited until I took a sip.
What is, everyone? Welcome to Nerd on the Podcast you didn't need, but you deserve, where all levels of nerd are welcome.
Yeah, you are.
Nature made him a freak, man made him a weapon, and God made it last too long. Today, we cover the expansive story of James Howlett's ending the 17-year run by Mr. Hugh Jackman himself on the marquee topic of the film Logan.
Take this pile of dirt.
Oh my God. Can I be honest with you? I watched that trailer before we recorded today and cried my eyes out.
Oh, that's great.
So
have you seen the whole wrap up video of his entire career?
No, I haven't.
It's
I saw
so
the behind the
good.
scenes wrap up at this film and it made me cry.
Oh, so
but before we get into all that, my name's Corey.
I'm Caitlin.
Ollie.
And I'm Tom.
Snicked.
Weapon Tom. And I am
Weapon
Josh. He's still doing it. And this episode is brought to you in part by the members of the Nerd On Nation that is powered by Patreon.
Patreon.
As a member of the Nerd On Nation, you do get fun perks like bonus episodes, early access to all of our episodes and all the episodes of the Capeless Crusaders. Just a lot of really good stuff going on over there. Discounts on merch. You get private channels on our Discord server, in which you can talk with other fans. You can talk with us.
Maybe even pirate channels. We don't know yet.
Pirate channels.
Anything's possible.
Everyone has to talk as a pirate.
Yarg.
But
Yarg.
you can
What
check
is
that
your
out.
scallywags?
You can check that one out at nerdon.io/Patreon. And you can also check out our Discord because it is open to the public, nerdon.io/Discord. And yeah, you can talk about gardening. You can talk about movies, TV shows, all sorts of stuff over on that Discord. And our partners, Apogee and Odyssey. Apogee, we are using their hype mic. It allows us to keep creating this show in the way that we are creating it. Normally, we do record with their Element 88, but we can't do that unless we ran like really long cables.
Really long cables.
Yeah.
Like
Super long.
True.
really long cables.
Like miles and miles of cable.
XLR cables. And then Odyssey headphones. They're nice. They're comfy. They're oh so yummy. They are Odyssey headphones. You can use that Odyssey if that is what you would like as your catchphrase. Feel free. You can take it. I give that to you. You have given us these.
So
they are
sweet.
amazing.
So giving.
That seems like
Fair exchange.
a fair trade.
We're on an Odyssey together.
But I do suggest that people check
On
out
the land or on the sea. We're all together.
With Odyssey.
Anyway, do check them
Yarg.
out. They are wonderful companies. They have been very kind to us, and they're always very supportive in all that we do. But that is the housekeeping. Yar.
Josh, you're very kind and supportive in all that we do.
Oh, yeah, it's true.
Corey, what'd I say
It's
about
hard.
lying?
No, I'm just kidding.
So that's going to bring us to our first few segments of the show, which
So excited.
this is a completed film. If some would say it completes a whole freaking
17-year
saga.
franchise, some might say.
Yeah.
Huh.
So at the end of this episode, we are going to rate it. And that brings us to our first segment, which is Guess That Grump.
Who's gonna be
But I have a daughter now.
Snick,
And my
snick, swing,
dad
swing.
is gone. Oh,
Corey's
So
was my favorite.
if you are brand new to Nerd On, that Guess That Grump, no, stop this. Guess That Grump is a segment of our show where we're going to go around the screens. Everyone at home also watch the video and see what I was doing. We're going to go around the screens and guess who is going to have the lowest score from 0 out of 5 out of the group. And no matter how high the number is, you are the Grump for the week. So since I always explain and I never get it wrong, I'm going to have Corey explain how you can get involved with the Nerd On Nation.
if you become a part of the Nerd On Nation today, You could start voting on who you think the grump will be and even get a shout out on the episode if you're right. It's our way of turning a negative thing into a positive, and you could be a part of it today. nerdon.io/Patreon.
And you turn to a
There it is.
guess that grumper guesstigator
Yeah,
golfer.
not what Tom said.
I guess my first guess.
Your I guess?
I guess it will. The grump of this episode will be probably Kaylin.
What?
Probably Kaylin for sure.
Okay.
So- Matter of
The
fact.
least familiar with everything. So for sure.
All right.
I don't know. It's got a huge
Kaylin?
jacked man.
Mm-hmm.
I sense a
Ignorance
spiteful five
ignorance
coming.
hardly buys us bliss on this show.
True.
Only buys us
Um,
confusion.
I'm gonna say Ali.
Okay.
You do know what his top male celebrity crush is, right?
Ali, who
No,
you got?
not
Who you
male.
got?
He said
Ollie,
his
who you
crush
got?
period was, it didn't matter if it
True
was
that.
male
Yeah,
or
it
female.
wasn't gender
It's just huge jacked man.
Huge
jacked
jacked
man.
man.
Jacked
He
man.
deadlifts tigers and rips them open, drinks their blood, and then just
Yes.
gets
Oh,
swole.
okay.
So
He
Ollie,
also
who do you
doesn't
think?
do any of that.
No.
I think it's going to be.
Yeah. Whom?
It's going to be a tough one. I'm going to go with Tom.
You
Hmm.
are
You're
gonna go with Tom?
Some bitch.
You remember, our dissertation of what is a grump?
Yeah.
Could be 4.9.
That's
Could
true.
be 4.95.
That's
Josh?
Sure.
I believe it will be Caitlin.
Okay.
We all don't know that she
wanted
has
to
is
vote
also
for me,
very
huh?
hard to
spank.
guess.
So her fault.
No one wanted to put a vote on Corey with the big old Logan poster
I
behind
was
him,
going to
no?
say,
No.
no, Corey. No,
No.
I did
For
not.
those
Some
of you
of us
watching at
might be-
home, you probably already know that some things.
Corey, we may be uncultured, but we're not fucking stupid.
Yeah.
So
You know.
This movie has an abundance of old white.
Sorry, Kaylin.
you see some of the Nerd Nation voted for Corey. It's like, oh well, shit, my bad.
Yeah.
My bad.
I'm on the
not
same
even
boat
mad.
same boat as Tom. It's a I don't know. I maybe haven't been with the franchise long enough. The Nerd on Nation also voted for you.
Sorry. Oh my god, that was just
So
a really
that's-
good.
Well, all right.
It's going to be a hard one to
The
find
order
out.
is going to go. Yeah, I think it's gonna be hard. That being said, I think it's gonna be a pretty close.
Yeah.
Like, oh, she's the grump. Air quotes.
Wow.
So, the order, it's me and Josh have no votes. Tom and Ollie have 1 vote. Kaylin, you have 4 votes for the grump.
Okay.
So that
I'm not
brings us
hurt.
to
I
our
don't know if I'm
complete.
gonna see-
At all?
I don't know if we're going to get
Spoiler.
a spiteful 1.0 or a spiteful 5.
Oh,
I
probably
feel like
one
one
of
of
each.
them are in them.
That
One
brings us
of
to our
each.
next segment, which is the complete spoiler of the Guess That Grump. It is the initial reactions or first impressions across the pond. Is that correct, Tom?
Across the pond, or
Kaylin-
some say across the border.
Caitlin, why don't you start us off? Just because I feel like that's
And to
way
remind
we should
everyone, we are in spoiler-free territory.
Yes.
So-
Okay. Speaking of spoilers, I knew how this movie ended before I watched it. Because I
Uh-huh.
saw Deadpool 2 when it came out. So I already knew, like, I kind of had an idea of what was happening with this movie already.
yes.
And I am very familiar with, like, the X-Men cartoon that was on growing up. I watched all of that. Wolverine is kind of like
bub.
Vegeta, so there was like some similarity there for me, where he's like the bad guy, but he's not the bad guy.
I feel like Magneto's the Vegeta because Wolverine's always a good guy.
I will say Vegeta never said.
You mean
Grumpy,
anti-hero?
though.
Vegeta never said, "I'm gonna steal your girl." What's up?
Well, you know, but no. So watching this was I knew it was going to hurt emotionally, but I didn't know how deep the cuts were going to be. And I feel
Yeah.
like even if you weren't a fan of X-Men or Wolverine or anything, you could understand everything about it without that context. And with the moment the movie ended, I was just like, stab, 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 stab. Because that's what it felt like it's doing to you the entire time. In all the good ways. But this movie was like I feel like every I was dotted, every T was crossed. Like it had all the things that I wanted from it. So it was really good.
I'm glad to hear that.
Josh?
All right.
Not a grump at all.
She didn't say I didn't like the movie though.
Yeah, so she didn't like the
Oh.
movie.
I liked the movie.
No, you can't do it retroactively.
It's not real.
No, we
Do it.
can't retcon that.
That's how it works.
Okay.
You can't be
all right,
Brian
fine,
Singer.
I'm
You can't
sorry,
retcon.
I'm just learning these rules.
I don't get to go back in hockey pads. It has to happen when it
He
happens.
waited until I took a sip.
That's true.
She almost did a spit take.
Twitch alert. For me, I was just, I mean, when I saw the trailer, I was all about this.
If you haven't seen the trailer, pause this right now.
Yeah.
Go watch the trailer. Wipe your eyes off
very well
afterwards
crafted.
so you
Yeah.
can see the screen again. And
Stop
then
crying
press
because
play.
there's no crying, and no, there's
It's
absolutely
the most
crying.
wonderfully
There's a
edited
lot of
trailer
crying,
I've ever
like-
seen.
a lot.
Yeah, and so I am a fan of trailers. It's one of the reasons why I love doing what I do of mixing trailers. So when I see a good one, I'm like, that was a really good trailer. But the movie looks dope. And I've always been a fan of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. So going into it, seeing it, it was an experience, and I want to stay away from spoilers. So I would just say it was a really great experience as a movie goer, emotionally, entertainment value, Easter eggs, references, just little things here and there that you were just like, this is a good movie.
It's Leonardo DiCaprio during Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah.
When he just points at the screen hella hard.
Yeah. So
It's like, that's the line. That's the line.
yeah, I will end there.
Ollie, Tom?
End scene.
I'll
can
go.
Go.
I'll go. So that there's separation between the identity of Corey and Tom.
Wow.
So I went to go watch this with Corey. And I remember specifically, we went to the Universal City Walk IMAX.
Mm-hmm.
And we went with our boy, Shout Out RJ. And we
RJ.
used to do a little thing. We used to, take part in some food and some things and play some games. And so we were like the squad out there. And so we went out there and watched it. And we had some Ludo Bird beforehand. So we were like, this is like the
feeling it.
perfect
It was a
date
good night.
before.
Yeah.
It's like the perfect date before you guys finally, get to that next physical level of
Yeah.
intimacy and love.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. And so when we
Aw.
watched this film, we actually watched it with another friend, Netta, who met us there.
Yeah.
And I'll give part of their reaction because Netta was just fucking crying the entire goddamn
Mhm.
movie. And me, I was just like, this shit right here, though. This is one of those, it doesn't have to shake hands. It doesn't have to hold any hands with anyone
This
else.
is a
and this could be
film.
its own movie. It could be its own movie. It's
got some nods.
It's got some nods and definitely some things just in the film that are like, oh, it recognizes the fans, but it's great. It's a wonderful film, and I'll talk a little bit more of like a news flash, even though it's like an older film and spoilers and all that stuff. But I would say this: if you have any kind of question about what superhero films can be, it's not a genre. And if you watch this film, you'll understand that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Ollie?
Yeah, this was so. Yeah, I mean, I've had a love and hate relationship with the X-Men series, as you guys may be aware of.
The movie
Spoilers.
franchise?
The whole franchise, that the Fox franchise of
Yeah.
X-Men, and but it did start off in a very positive place. I loved the first X-Men movie when I saw it, and I even loved X2 when I saw it. And a big
Yes.
portion of that was because of Hugh Jackman's portrayal as Wolverine. Not only that, but also his relationship with Patrick Stewart in those movies. And there is there is some substance there. Even now, when you go back and watch those movies, you see that sort of like relationship between them. And even though those are like cookie cutter, pristine colored like presentations of like X-Men back in the day, obviously a sign of like the inception of the sort of like, I know you just said it's not a superhero genre, but in those the dawn of those superhero movies, everything was very Hollywood and like, lens flares, things like that. And then cut to however many years later it's been. We're in the year, 2029. That's
20 years now, but the movie was 17. Yeah.
And you really get a sense of that in a very meta way. And of course, in the movie of that character progression. And you see where these characters have been and where it's led them. And I think the style of the movie, the very like Western noir feeling, and for preparation of this, I watched the noir cut of it, which I think adds a lot, and we'll talk about that more, obviously. But that it's like a perfect crescendo to those two people's relationship, and also a perfect ending, I feel, to that sort of like Fox X-Men run of like, this is where we've been. This is what all the characters have like, gone through. Let's utilize that.
If they just ended on Days of Future Past and Logan, done.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
It's like
you win the game.
That.
You win the game. You're done.
You take you pull every positive that you possibly can out of that franchise to help inform and craft this, and I think that really paid off.
Well, yeah. Now that you've heard the story of when I saw it the first time, I'll tell you about the fact that I saw this twice in theaters.
Oh.
And went to Target when it opened to buy the collector's edition of this movie,
Wow.
so I could watch.
So you don't like it, right?
So I could watch Logan Noir, which is Mangold's kind of baby child after taking these black and white stills on set and deciding, I want to do a black and white version of this film. I'm someone who has been, with the exception of Apocalypse, I have been in the theaters for every single X-Men movie that's come out. I remember the theater. I remember which room in the Megaplex that I saw the first X-Men with my dad, and just being enthralled because I had grown up reading X-Men comics, and seeing Hugh Jackman. My wife and I actually watched the movies leading up to this, with exceptions of a few, but it definitely paid attention the most to X1 and X2, like you mentioned, which are still really fun movies.
They are.
And getting to see at the beginning, and Hugh Jackman taking this character and keeping some aspects of Wolverine that makes Wolverine, but really making it his own thing.
His own, yeah.
And seeing what he did with Mangold in the last two films, with the Wolverine and Logan. I can't speak highly enough about this film. I think, like Tom said, this is, if you want to look at what superhero films can be, it's a movie that happens to have a superhero in it. It's not a movie about a superhero, if that makes sense. And I think that's something that's missing within that genre. Is we're focusing too much on the
heroic,
spectacle,
unrelatable aspects,
the spectacle of it all, and less about the heart of it. Which is why I think Tony Stark was such a big character. Is he pretty much gets all the heart of the Marvel films, and all the character growth and arcs and all that kind of stuff. So, just to pay homage to the 17 years that Hugh Jackman did, this is the way to end playing this character. I couldn't think of a better, as David Barry says, chef's kiss to this movie.
Yeah. And I mean, to shout out to David Barry as well. Like, I remember when the Wolverine had come out and he was saying like, Hugh Jackman had been saying like, I'll keep playing the character until they do an old man Logan. And then lo and behold, the film's called Logan. And I was like, shit.
Yeah.
David Barry's got a pulse.
Legs.
David Barry's got a pulse on like when films are going to come out. Cause like, he was talking about Old Man Logan all day, and then all of a sudden, like I was like, "Oh well, shit, this is it."
There you go.
Well, actually,
the last thing I'll say on this is as far as these kind of grittier, I guess, almost character studies of these superheroes. And Tom knows I say this all the time. I know comparison is the thief of joy, but this is what?
Can I say?
This is a film, a superhero film that pays homage to films that paved the way for it, like Shane, like the old Westerns. And I think for me, this is the prime example of what, and while I liked this other film, this is what Joker was missing for me. It's more of an homage than let's take elements from these films and put it. Yeah, exactly. And so if you just look at this is exactly what I would like to see, more of moving forward with these kind of films.
Speaking of David Barry, this episode does come as not a multi-parter, but just kind of a
Kind of like a little
special-
baton pass.
A
Yeah.
baton pass. The Capeless Crusaders, our sister show, is going to be doing an episode for Old Man Logan, the comic book, because both shows are on episode 144. And so we thought
Twins.
it would be perfect if we did something in line with each other.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
check
I would
out
highly
their episode
recommend
when
checking
comes
it out. They are a wealth of knowledge in comic books that
Very much.
I hope to attain one day.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Strive for.
I am but a fraction of what they were. You know, the apple did fall from the tree, so
And
Getting
then
to
roll down
talk
the
with them
hill.
about comics over the last couple years, and especially some great conversations I had with Barry about the new X-Men stuff. They're just insanely smart and intelligent when it comes to comics and superheroes. So please check it out.
Yeah.
and
And
also
we did some
very
fun stuff
giving.
with them for Dark Knight Returns. So definitely check
Yeah.
out our content.
Yeah,
with that.
very giving. If you are ever like looking for comic book stuff, they have great conversations and recommendations on our Discord.
Yes.
That
Yes,
you can take a look and find. But with that, that
Great.
brings us to our next two segments, which is going to be our brief summary, synopsis, and then our production.
Mhm.
And so the
Start.
brief summary, please.
In the near future, a wary Logan cares for an ailing Professor X at a remote outpost on the Mexican border. His plan to hide from the outside world gets upended when he meets a young mutant who is very much like him. Logan must now protect the girl and battle the forces that want to capture her. Hilarity ensues.
AKA
Hilarity?
Just kidding.
Hilarity or
Not
hilarity
deep,
ensues.
deep sadness?
Heartbreak.
You know what? Fun
AKA
fact.
Sadness.
Wolf and Cub. What?
I did learn that the first pass of the script, him and Laura actually had more of a quippy relationship. And we'll go into that later on. I don't want to get into spoilers right now, but it did
Yes.
change quite a bit. So you're not far
Spoilers?
off
Yeah.
from the original intention, actually.
Mhm.
So for the production, distributed by 20th Century Fox, has brought you Giant Films. Oh, by the way, I hope everyone finds this next part kind of humorous because there is some hilarity to what films I decided to cite. 20th Century Fox, or AKA now 20th Century Studios, which looks really weird. Alien, Home Alone, and Miss Doubtfire.
Oh.
The producers, Hutch Parker is one of them, who did Fantastic Four. Not the Fantastic Four, but this is Fan Four Stick.
Right. Right.
In Time and X-Men Apocalypse. Simon Kinberg produced Cinderella, Legion, the TV show, and Deadpool 2. Lauren Schuler Donner produced Free Willy, Constantine,
Yes.
and X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Free Willy.
Yeah, so I'm like, I throw in a little bit of like, this is
Love
that
the
old
Bulls.
baby.
I grew
Hey,
up
good.
on that movie, dude. That Michael Jackson song from that Hold Me Like the River Jordan. Remember that?
Just
Great.
Just
to
about to say you
quote
grew up
Sammy,
on Wolverine.
I
just
did.
grew up on X-Men Origins. Okay.
just to quote Samuel Jackson as well as Zack Snyder, it's like there are worlds outside of the comic book stuff. So this
Yeah.
is some of the stuff that came in from it. So some of the
man.
writers, Scott Frank, Minority Report, The Wolverine, and Get Shorty. One of the
Yes.
writers as well for this story and screenplay, James Mangold, The Girl
Who also
Interrupted.
directed it.
Yes. Kate Leopold and Oliver and Company. Did I not say the directors?
No.
I
no.
The
think you
director, James Mangold, The Wolverine, 310 to Yuma, and Walk the Line.
Also
Free
Ford v
10
Ferrari.
to Yuma.
Yeah, I wanted to do this stuff before this film.
Yeah.
And this will completely make that a lie. Michael Green, who wrote for Green Lantern, Blade Runner 2049, and then, as Josh said, the future, Jungle Cruise, the new Jungle Cruise film.
Oh.
Cast, Hugh Jackman, best known for Australia, Les Miserables, and The Prestige.
Oh, of course.
Oh,
I thought you were going
yeah,
to throw
of
Kate
course.
Leopold
Of
in there
course you're gonna
somewhere.
bring that
'cause
up.
Tim
I
Mangold-
I was
Kate-
waiting for that.
I already put Kate Leopold in there.
Okay.
Patrick Stewart, Patrick Stewart in Dune, which I saw recently. I was like,
He's
my
in
God, he's so
Dune?
young. Charlie's Angels, the newest one,
Really?
and Green Room.
Oh.
Yeah, Richard E. Grant, The Hitman's Bodyguard, Can You Ever Forgive Me, and Gosford Park. Boyd Holbrook, who's in The Predator, Gone Girl, Run All Night. Stephen Merchant, or is it Stephen Merchant?
Stephen.
Stephen Merchant, Jojo Rabbit, Hall Pass, and Run Fat Boy Run.
Mm-hmm.
And
love
Daphne Kane, who this was very easy because she only has 3 other credits other than this film: The Refugees, His Dark Materials, and Anna.
Look
the
up her
release
parents, though. Fantastic actors.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The release date for this film is March 3rd, 2017. The runtime is 137 minutes. The budget was $127 million to make, and it grossed $619 million. The Rotten Tomatoes score is 93% critical and 90% audience. And it goes to note that this film was also nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay.
Yeah.
I do want to just say,
Wow.
like you saying the runtime and even reading it or any time I've ever read it, 137 minutes. I never feel that when I watch it.
No, I could have. It's.
Hmm.
I mean, it wouldn't serve the story, but I could have done a 3-hour film.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But
Wow.
Easily.
I think where they cut it is good.
Yeah.
I mean, we could have got some Hulklings, baby. Who knows?
There's
Check
some
out that Capeless
fantastic.
Crusaders episode.
There's some fantastic deleted scenes. If anyone here has if anyone listening has the Blu-ray or DVD, check those out. It is worth sitting and watching. My wife and I, after we watched the movie, sat for another hour just going through all that stuff.
Wow.
So now we are out of spoiler-free territory and to spoiler-full country.
Yes.
We're just going to talk about our favorite parts, our favorite characters, and
Oh,
then
man.
qualms, baby.
Where do we even start? Where do I start?
I'm going to start.
I
I'm
don't
going to
know.
start first off the
Take us
bat right
away.
here. This is hot. And I was talking about this before when in our digital green room with Corey. I don't think any other superhero film will ever top this for me. And it's when Laura comes in, not firstly introduced, but comes in, and the Reavers are there,
holding
and
the-
Hugh Jackman is trying to get Patrick Stewart into the car and all that stuff,
Yeah.
and he's watching. He's like, "What the hell's going on?" And she walks in after she rolls the head, and this is in the trailer, and this is when she just like chucks down her backpack, and I was like,
Oh yeah,
"This is the most badass." Just that one small piece, I was like,
yeah.
it's a low angle, so she's
Yeah.
just like the ground is in frame, and she chucks it in, and then you hear her like, boys, hold on, take her down, and it's I
Stop
was
shooting.
just
She
like,
heals.
The amount of
this is so good.
the amount of subtlety
It's
she's
so-
able to convey with her acting is kind of
Oh my god.
it's kind of staggering.
Daphne Keane,
and
is
Yeah.
amazing.
very much accentuated by the fact that she's like mute for a majority of this movie. It's so
Yeah.
that's all you really have to go on, and
It's
she
her eyes,
really
yeah.
brought it.
It's.
I mean,
go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, this is what kids in film should be like.
This is
Every
like
kid in
what
a
it should
film
be.
should be Laura.
Should be
Yes.
badass
Like,
in their own. But the thing
mute.
is, like, the parent has to take care of them, right? So, like,
How did
there
you feel
is
about the
that
kids in It?
Well, the one that actually figured out a way to kill it, then is cool. But everyone else is like, come on, man.
Okay, you have lost all credibility for me as far as you getting to judge kids in movies.
Kids need to be adults. They need
Let
to
me get
have
back
like
to
adult
let me get back to
lineage.
Daphne Keane real quick because I did find some stuff out watching those behind the scenes things last night. So before she got to the U.S., she's located in Spain with her family, and they signed her up for I think it was 3 or 4 months of martial arts class, and then came here and did 2.5 more months of stunt training, which
Whoa.
she would always arrive early and always stay late because she loved it, and she did a lot of her own fighting and stunts in the film herself, which I thought was the coolest thing.
Yeah.
And there's this little segment on there where Hugh Jackman was saying she's like, the moment I knew that this is kind of saying like, this is the moment I knew she could pick up the mantle is just seeing her on set. And he's like, I looked over at one point and like, she had my claws on and she was just smiling from ear to ear. And like, there's a picture someone took when they revealed her claws to her for the first time. And she's just like this, like she's just lit up from side to side. So you can really tell that like it is the character Laura, but there's a lot of her in this, like threw herself
She
into
got
this
invested.
role, and it doesn't go unnoticed in the acting.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You can tell when it's like it's a high honor for
list
them.
a favorite part.
Go ahead, Josh.
A little bit of a delay right now. My favorite on the top of my list is probably when Logan is helping the farmer with like the pump, and the other like the neighboring farmer comes, and the farmer's like, stay back, but Logan's like, nope. He gets in, and I just love it that he's standing up for
Go
the
play
kind
Okie
of the quote.
Dickhead somewhere else.
Yeah, the quote little guy. He's doing what he does. He's he's standing up for who needs to be stood up for,
Yeah.
and it just and then oh man, later on when we see the farmers again, ooh, the brutality.
Well,
The thing about that scene with the water too is he breaks a shotgun over his knee,
Yeah.
which is
I mean,
a little thing. But
it-
I was like, holy shit.
it's literally like the most westerny the film gets. I feel like because it's like outsider coming in to stop like like inside town corruption, and he's just like new law. And it's like, does anyone ever tell you talk too much? It's like all the time. And I was like, oh, so good,
Then you probably know that you've heard this more than I'd like. Yeah.
more than I'd like.
More than I'd like.
Kaylin? Ali?
I loved pretty much any time that she was fighting on screen, Weapon 20 or X-23. Like just the brutality of it and the kind of there is that aspect of humor to it where like it's a little kid at the end of the day. But just seeing the brutality of it was really cool. And it's hard to describe this as a favorite part, so I want to save it for a different discussion, which is the noir stuff. But as far as just favorite scene, it just has to be the dinner scene, like of them with at the guest, the farmer's guest, and just kind of like seeing that family unit kind of going back and forth, and like it's like I'd be lying if I say you were a good pupil, and just like that kind of stuff. Like I ate all of that up because it was all that sort of that history, that is just like palpable, and you're like, man, I wish I could go back in a weird parallel universe. I wish they made like 17 more, X-Men movies so I could see more of their relationship and more of that journey.
Ollie, if you like that dinner scene, there's an extended cut version where they do talk about like Jean and other things. I won't get too far into it, but I would highly recommend you look that up and watch it.
Yeah, I got to go through those. A couple weeks ago, I just caved in and got the 9 movie bundle.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Because I was like, I don't want to necessarily own everything, but it's a good price.
And if you get it on iTunes, it's a free upgrade to 4K.
That's where I got it.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So that's where, and because I really wanted to watch Noir for this one.
Kaylin?
Couple different things. I really enjoy things with the house because like when they after the dinner, when he's like taking him up to bed and Laura's like watching him carry him and like paying attention to how his mannerisms have changed. And like I think a favorite but like the most heartbreaking part is when Xavier is like thinks he's talking to Wolverine and is like, this is what home is. It's the most perfect night I've ever had. I don't deserve it. And then just like
snicked,
knowing the entire time, like the moment he walked in and they didn't show his face, I was like, that's not him. He's going to die. He's going to die right now. But like, it's a favorite part for just in how it was executed and the emotion of like, this was throwing up the volleyball of like, here's what home should feel like. And it's like the last line that Logan has where they just spike it into your face of like, oh, this is what it feels like.
Yeah, he says that he actually says this is what home feels like to the real Logan. What he's saying to the X-24 when he dies
like, I hurt people.
I hurt people. I did a terrible thing, but right
it's
before
in that vicinity. But yeah, you definitely get that you get that sense of dread.
Yeah, he's talking to the real Logan when he said this is what homes feel like. But then X-24, he's saying that I hurt people, but he does say that it was the most perfect night of his life, which is kind of a bittersweet, poetic way for Charles to go out after having suffered who knows how many years, kind of doped up and in that containment.
It was 1 year, wasn't it?
To protect. No, I don't think it was a year that he was stuck in there. Was it?
A while.
I think
the radio said a year ago.
Oh, okay. So still,
the radio said
year
like
of being all drugged up
and
and kind of out of his mind, getting to have this perfect night with probably the person that he had the strongest connection with and never thought he'd have this thing with, or always tried to show what a family could be like. Yeah. Is kind of a bittersweet, like, I know he died, but like, look what he got before.
Yeah. I like that part of the movie specifically because it does give us something that, the X-Men have had like, of course, that team / quote family aspect of as a group, but this was like pure family.
Yeah.
Where it's like grandpa, dad, daughter, that kind of feel to it. And so it was such a different juxtaposition to what we have experienced thus far. And then just to see it just dashed.
To me, more heartbreaking moment was when Logan does come back and all he can say is, "It wasn't me. It wasn't me.
It wasn't me."
It's like, oh God.
Well, yeah, it's a dad story, so it gets you, Corey.
It really is.
I was talking about like the volleyball setup and Spike. What that I was talking about is when he was like, sorry, I brought up like two separate moments kind of in the same thing. But like the setup of this is what a home feels like, savor it. And then when he's like dying, and then he's like, oh, this is what it feels like. That was
adds
the
to that sentiment still. Yeah. Because
Well,
he has that perfect, like, dinner. And that's like the first thing. And then he's having all of these sort of like realizations. And I think that's what I want to say. That's when he in the bed is when he like fully unlocks his memory of what he might have done.
Yeah.
Like,
getting there. I would actually say that much like the film Rocky, the film has a lot of plot going on, but the real story actually starts at the farmhouse. Because this is when you start setting up your character. Before, all of it was just kind of like, we're setting up the characters, we're setting up the what's going on. But then the true thesis of the film and what's going on is like Logan is holding on to, even though he's just talking about like how, like you can't talk about the past and all that stuff, but he's holding on to Charles so much because that's like been his father figure in his life. And they've built such a bond, even though they like are like Logan's way older than him. Once he finally goes away, the true thesis of like, your only purpose in life can't be that you have to take care of your dad. It has to be that you take care of your daughter. And even though you reject your daughter, you reject your daughter, you reject your daughter. And then finally he starts accepting her. And I like, it was such a pivotal scene for it to all happen that way, where it's like the writers are all just like, we got to build this up. We got to make this sweet. We got to give them a glimmer that potentially they can get out of it. And then all of a sudden take it all away. And it's like such a really well crafted writing as well as directed sequence. Like, it's, whew. I mean, that's the thing where it's like the intimate small moments, like typically in a house are like the ones that you're probably gonna get the more juice out of.
Yeah.
Like,
well, that's a brilliant thing about this movie is the scale.
Yeah. It's not, it's like what Mask of the Phantasm does for Batman. To me, the house sequence is like what Aunt May does for Peter Parker in Spider-Man 2. It's what the farm scene in Ultron does for that film. It's like the real film, it's like, but this one, it's like not in the sense where like the film kind of goes around it, where this one's like, oh, there's a scene, it's this one to talk about. But
what I really dug was that, as big as the scale was, it was able to do that by
Small as
only,
scale.
Well, I mean, as large as like the world was, like it maintained the smaller scale, like by just focusing on the characters. Like you very rarely like cut away to like a reporter or something. Like it's like
it only affects like
be,
30 people the whole movie.
Yeah, it's like you hear these like little nuggets about like what might have happened, what has happened, and you learn about the world just through their encounters and their perspectives, like whatever's on the radio, before it cuts off before you get all the juicy details.
I feel like that's like the brilliance of it, because I've always been a very big critic of like using things to explain exposition unless they're trying to convey the theme. And this one, it conveys some exposition, but it does it to the point where it's like, what happened? Because at the beginning of the film, they do a little bit of bait and switch where it's like, Charles is like, what did you do, Logan? What did you do? Yeah. And it's like, oh shit, did Old Man Logan really happen? And then you watch, like,
But we learned just enough to get it. It's like, okay, no, it's actually reversed. And now you gain a whole new perspective on what Logan's doing and what his purpose is. And you kind of gain a little bit more respect for his character. And that really kind of makes, I think, the rest of it a lot more interesting to watch.
I think it plays really well with the sci-fi, because I think sci-fi is such a great piece in order to play with like concepts. And they play with the concept of like, what would happen if the most powerful mind in the world had Alzheimer's or had generating. And I was just like, that's really, really, really good. That's a good idea. And they play with it. I'm like, oh god,
yeah.
And it's like feelings.
We know what he's capable of, from like watching older movies, even like him just stopping everybody at the museum in X2 just because he wanted to have a private conversation. So he freezes everybody. That's like, he's freaking powerful. And he almost killed every mutant at X2. Spoilers for that movie. But like, that's, you're like, wow. this person, it's very dangerous, very, very volatile situation.
Yeah.
And it just platforms the drama of the film, where it's like that aside, like he is a father figure who has, who needs medical assistance all the time, and in order to keep him lucid, they have to drug him up all the time, and it's like a really sad story.
Well, he's in a very vulnerable place, and then you stick him into a world where everything seems to be against them. You set that up like right away in the first scene, with him in the limousine, and you're like, okay, some interesting things are going to happen in this.
Yeah. Well, that seems so brilliant, because within the 4 minutes, you're like, oh, that's what this is going to be. I've been waiting 17 years to see a guy with 6 knives on his hands, actually stab someone, and now I get it. Now I get to have that. I don't know how y'all did that for 17 years, where you didn't get to show the guy with 6 knives on his hands actually stab anyone, but here we are.
Well, also to that point, the opening is so brilliant because there's no music. It's just the scene and
there's the radio.
The radio stuff, but it's like there's no scoring, there's no like all that stuff. There's no fanfare about it. It's like Bane and Batman fight.
Yeah, well, it adds to the grit, and like to what Corey was mentioning about like about the sort of brutality of it now with their R ratings. We haven't really pointed that part out, that this is rated R versus everything else been PG or PG-13. This is where you can finally see Wolverine in action in full, beast mode, or berserker mode, whatever.
Mode, yeah.
Yeah. And I think it really adds to the weight of what that character is going through without seeing those things. It doesn't make it the same impact. So I'm glad that we, at least in this last one, we're able to see some of that.
If I can kind of not quote, but if I can summarize kind of something James Mangold said, he was like, it's a blessing that we got this R rating, because now you're not telling a story for kids. You can tell a story that has nuance, that has, philosophical questions within it.
It has identity.
That has its own identity. And it's not about, all right, do these things so that we can get to the next fight. All right, do these things so that we can get to the next fight as soon as possible, because that's what the kids want to see. And so he's like, am I glad we got to actually show what Wolverine can do? Yes, but it was more important to me to be able to tell this kind of story needs to be R. This is not a PG-13 story.
I mean, like had the last film before the Wolverine been R, I think it kind of could have been a little bit of the testament of like the pain, the physical pain that he goes through. Because I think that's what they really try to tell with makeup and costuming, of like, leaving holes and the blood around it, and like seeing gashes and stuff like that. And I think that's a real big thing, because it's not only about like just inferring what psychological and emotional rot he's been through, but the fact that the adamantium in his skeleton is creating poison. It's a poison. It's metal in his body, and his mutant regenerative abilities are refusing it now. Like he doesn't have it anymore. So it's like that weight, that inferred weight that you're like, oh, I forget he weighs 400 pounds. Yeah. It's that.
There's a deleted scene where he gets a ticket and Charles says, sorry, my son has a bit of a lead foot. And he just looks at him, and I'm just like, leave that in.
Leave that in. That was very good.
Yeah. I mean,
I'll go next.
No.
I haven't got to do a favorite scene yet, so I'm going to go ahead and jump in. I'm going to save some stuff that Tom and I are probably going to cover about the death scene for a little later, because there's some beautiful poetry there. For me, the opening scene is great, but the seizure scene in Vegas, I think it's Vegas.
No, it's Ohio.
Okay.
Oh,
the seizure scene. Getting to see. I mean, it was a brilliant concept, the way they did that, and show, they had 2 guys on ropes holding Hugh Jackman back as he's going down this hallway, and, the brutality of seeing him kind of having to kill everyone, and the way they did it, technically, like they just had someone shake the camera and they would shoot it extra wide so that when they stabilized it in post, you wouldn't see the edges at all. Whoa. So it's an in-camera trick, which is brilliant. And then the moment he gets the injection in, it's just that it reminded me of Inception this time, watching it around. Everyone just kind of falls at once.
All at the same time, yeah.
And Laura being there, and like that, for me, it was so heartbreaking, especially this time watching. I watched the noir version. It's just got a whole different vibe to it. But him coming around the corner, getting that first guy, and then seeing Laura just trying to crawl towards, and then that look back at him like, help. I think it's just a wonderfully shot scene. And again, there aren't any words. There isn't any music. There's a sound effect. There's the
warbling.
and you get a lot of story out of both those characters, and I think it's really, really quite wonderful. And the scene before where he's sitting in bed with her talking about Shane, and I didn't know this until this last time that's actually when he says it's the first movie I saw in the theaters. That was an improvised line by Patrick Stewart because it was actually the first movie he ever saw in theaters. And finally, you know, hearing that speech in the movie that she gives at the end of there's no living with the killing. And just how that's the theme of the movie is that you're talking about a guy, and he talks to Laura about it later on when he talks about his dreams where he's like, I'm killing people and you're going to have to live with that. And she's like, well, the people I kill are bad guys. And he goes, either way.
That too.
Yeah. Just the understanding, like, there's the thesis for you of this film. It's a guy who's spent 200 years, you know, killing people. And as good as a heart that he has to protect, and even with the best intentions, there has to be some sort of,
he has the limits.
You know, it has its limits. Exactly.
He has that rage within him. But
just that kind of
takes
lifestyle
over.
will always catch up to you no matter how hard you try. And so that's a learning moment for Laura. That's why she gives that speech at the end where she's like, okay, I have to walk this line now.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the wonderful thing that he also imparts is the don't let them make you the weapon, or don't be the weapon they made you to be. And I was like, that's a hard thing.
Reminds me of that quote.
Yeah. It's funny because, like, you mean the nature made him a mutant and all that stuff, that quote?
No, it's from another movie. It's but you go. Don't worry about it.
Oh, I was gonna say. Well, I mean, the cool thing is kind of like it's really funny to think about it in retrospect after watching X-Men Origins, and in this cinematic canon, like, he chose to become the Weapon X, and then when you realize, like, how he had amnesia, what about my past, and then
Who am I?
And then the rest of the films play out, and you're like, wow, he, in this new mind, he is the victim. But then after, technically after Days of Future Past, he gets all his memories back. So, like, he doesn't have all that. So it's like, it's interesting to, like, have the lucidity of, like, I chose to do this, and then all of a sudden I realized I wasn't chosen to do this, and I realized I was chosen. Like, the fact that, like, his name's James Howlett, like, it shows up, and that was, like, huge. Like, and they go by that. I was like, oh, it's not Logan anymore. It's James Howlett. I'm like, that's very interesting. Like, because he's always been
Charles.
Yeah,
Call him Logan no matter what. Because my wife actually pointed something out at the dinner table. He introduces himself to the family as James, but Charles still calls him Logan throughout the whole scene.
Mm-hmm.
That's his identity.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not his identification. It's who he identifies with.
Right. Exactly.
Josh?
I was going to talk about more of, like, an aspect of it, and maybe this will lead into, and I don't know if it will, but Corey, you had mentioned speaking about death, but a fascinating thing that I found about this, that it was an emotional experience for me as a moviegoer, is what this movie provides, and it is an ending.
Mm-hmm.
It is a death
finale,
a finale for one character that I love.
Two characters. I mean, there's movies that came out afterwards with Patrick Stewart, so it's like I still experience him. Do you know what I mean? In, like, an X-Men viewpoint. I don't think there's been an X-Men movie that he's been in that's come out.
He Days of Future Past came before this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then,
and I'll tell you why I know this.
There's a glitch in the Matrix, and I am remembering things poorly.
No.
So
the only reason I know that is because
it's the Mandela effect.
Yeah.
Patrick Stewart talked about after the screening and the lights came back up, he knew it was Hugh Jackman's last one, and he grabbed Hugh's hand and said, "Me too," and that was it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, then what I will say is, I think the emotional thing for both of them, it's just that this provided an ending, and I almost want to say that it gave way, and almost, I want to say, permission in a standpoint of other movies that handle superhero characters to go that route of such a finale. I mean, for example, like a recent thing was with Iron Man and Marvel. Like, it's like you have permission to do really adult things and really serious things with ramifications. I mean, like, seriously, the way that the Farm family is just essentially obliterated and they are killed. But this is, there are ramifications to not just your own actions, but to the actions that they don't just affect you, they affect other people. And so it was the importance and the finality and just the responsibility that it brought
Yeah,
to
I mean, the family wasn't
movies that
cannon
happen
fodder.
to have superhero characters.
Mhm.
Anyway,
They weren't just like background characters; they were like cannon fodder, and like that, like when they all get destroyed, just get murdered. It's fucking sad. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
And I think also it gets button capped with like the worst thing too is when the father turns his shotgun to Logan.
And it clicks.
And it clicks because he doesn't have anything. So like he aimed to kill. He aimed to shoot.
Yeah.
And I mean that's also a funny thing. What happens in the film is that like even though Charles is like not all the way there anymore, like he's still his mission of like, you know, do you understand this, Logan? Like it's like what we do today is so important for tomorrow for the children. And then Logan just that cynical view of like there are no more new mutants, which I was like and then but I was like, oh, there are new mutants, baby. But it's an interesting thing where it's like Charles always looks for the future, always looking for, even like he like in a way is
It's like finding Laura. Like that's
yeah, like they're both like remnants of the past in a sense, and they both can look at it, but like they know those days are gone, for better or for worse, and for worse typically. But like Charles is the only one that's kind of looking towards the future of like, hey, like there are going to be more, and like Logan's just like, let's just get through the day. Which is it's a fun thing.
Like Charles is always ever the kind of peacemaker he wants to be. Even when they're going out of the hotel afterwards, he's just apologizing to everybody as they're like sprinting. He's like, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry.
Well, and then also like in the hotel where he's like, this, you know, like Logan's like, this is all a comic book. It's all fantasy. And then he's like, people
it's
die.
ice cream for bedwetters.
Yeah. And then
there's a
Charles,
difference.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Oh,
There's
and
a
then
difference in.
Go ahead.
You finish.
Delays.
Okay, I'm finishing.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, and then Charles says, you know, Laura doesn't need to be reminded of the cruelty of the world around us,
The impermanence of life.
the impermanence of life. And I was like, oh, God. And like it's such a. But the thing is, like, she was made to become a weapon, so it's like she already knows. She already knows, and it's gonna be now. She has all the wisdom of those two between them, and it's like she's there's so much weight put on her as a child too. Is like to make sure her father doesn't kill himself.
Yeah.
I'm like,
What I was going to say is I was going to point out that like a couple things just based off what you said, Josh, and what you said, Tom, like primarily you do get that sense of like, this is like Logan's story. I mean, it's called Freaking Logan, right? But like you get the story that you get the feel that it's like, it's his like ending story. Like it's his bookend. So that I definitely feel that first and foremost, but you definitely get that sense from Professor X too. Like he spent his whole life dedicated to building a school and to forwarding and empowering and putting all these mutants up, setting them up, and he desperately wants to get her across the border because to him, I feel like that's his sense of him being able to continue or have some kind of legacy because like obviously his school's probably shut down, right, abandoned, whatever it might be at this point.
Yeah.
And I think he just wants to feel that like before his time is up that he has some kind of legacy. Like there is some kind of future that all his work hasn't been in vain.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's what he's trying to struggle
with.
with.
That's why he says to Logan when he said none of it's real, and he says it is to Laura.
yeah.
And that's why it's so important.
Yeah.
Because we have to
And
give her some sort of hope. That's his whole thing.
Right. So that's
And
that's driving him to the point where even he's, you know, maybe playing it a bit naive and ignoring the comic book warnings that Logan keeps bringing up. But I think that's just because he wants to believe, and he's always had a sense of hope, right? That's his thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really it's bittersweet to see that where it's come to this point, where driving his decisions where he is now. You still get that sense that he's still Professor X, even though he's degenerating and
Through
stuff.
and through.
He's still him.
I mean, you get those real moments of like helping him onto the toilet in the stall and just like the bickering that they have. Like, trust me,
And
I'm not
all
looking.
of that
Yeah.
is accentuated, and I would be remiss to not bring up the noir aspect of like the noir release. Like I think it adds, and it sounds like Corey, you just watched the noir one too, or recently, and
Last night.
yeah, same. And it just adds a whole different dimension to the movie, and I think it really helps to center focus on the characters a lot more. You know, it's sort of like a horror movie thing where like the absence of color in this case, right? You kind of put your own imagination into it, so it doesn't necessarily take away
like
anything, but it
focuses
just
the
adds
senses.
it adds so
Yeah.
much more.
Yeah.
I mean, again, there's pros and cons to each version.
Right.
Honestly, it's just a totally different experience. So if you're someone who loves this film and just want to almost experience it fresh again, I would highly recommend getting your hands on the noir version because it's just as beautiful, it's just as breathtaking, but it just has a whole different tone almost.
Especially if you're watching it, if you want to watch it through the Western lens,
Yeah.
the noir version definitely helps.
And
convey a lot of those
as
emotions.
Tom would always point out, I'm sure you're about to, it's not just a black and white version.
No.
They didn't just
It's
take the
treated.
color out. They recolored the whole thing
It's not some
specifically for
Instagram
this.
filter.
Yeah, they had to go from scratch and recolor it.
Wow.
Because you have to
And
show what
reshade it
you
and
want. Yeah.
contrast.
Like, do I want this more crushed black? How much hair do I want to show?
Yeah.
Also,
Does
like
blood need
the
to be
light
darker?
in people, in
Yeah.
people's eyes is a real big thing in
Yeah,
black
but it's
and white. If you
gorgeous.
think about it,
The way they did
Very
it
big in
is
black and
absolutely gorgeous. So,
So it just helped that sort of Western vibe along, especially in this walkthrough. So I definitely it accentuated those components of the movie, so which I dug.
before we move on to the next segment, I do want to talk about the benefit of having James Mangold on both these films, The Wolverine and Logan.
set it
and
up.
Tom and I have talked about this many, many times, and every single time it gets me. I get like goosebumps thinking about it. And James Mangold has confirmed this, which is wonderful. In The Wolverine, spoilers, y'all, if you haven't seen The Wolverine, pause this, go watch it, and then watch Logan because it's a whole new experience that way. Yukio, who is I guess, sightseer sees the future, clairvoyant in a sense. The way she describes it is she can see a part of someone's life and it's always their death, but it's like looking through a keyhole. So she only sees fragments of it. And she sees Logan's death when she meets him.
Very end.
And she says, I saw you die. And he goes, how? And he says, you're on your back. There's blood everywhere. And you're holding your own heart in your hand. And the way he dies in this movie is on his back. There's blood everywhere. And he's holding Laura's hand. So it's not a physical, it's not actually his heart, but it's his daughter. And James
She's never
Mangold
wrong.
said that he had planned this for a while. Him and the other writer, I'm blanking on his name right now. Stephen
Scott Frank or
Scott
Michael
Frank,
Green.
thank you.
Okay.
Scott Frank also said that this is something they had planned for a while. And with the line,
So that's how it feels.
so this is what it feels like. Mangold had 3 versions and Scott had 1. And Scott said, I put the idea out there, meaning this man who's lived 200 years and experienced so much that there's still a flavor of life he hasn't tasted, and that is his release. And Mangold said, I wanted to build on top of that. He goes, so with the shot composition, this is what it feels like, is to have love and to know what true love feels like looking at his daughter. This is what it feels like, to, again, die and be released from, pretty much the pain he's had, especially in the last year, but his whole life, all the people he's lost. Oh, this is what it feels like. And then to have a daughter and to have someone who looked up to him and to be that father figure and have a family. Oh, this is what it feels like.
And like,
And
I will say that,
it's so multi-layered. It's the perfect line.
and to add to that, it's like, you could talk about cinematic history where with the character, having the love lost, with the first wife, and then, Jean, and that idea of non-reciprocated love. And so like, yeah, he loved other people, but never having that unconditioned family love where
Right.
it was like, they're going to love me through and through, no matter who I am, for everything I've done, for all the
She's still
pain that
there,
I've
yeah.
caused. Like, and
she calls him Dad.
that line. Okay. There's 2 types
Daddy.
of crying in a theater that I do. there is the one where it's like, this is so beautiful, and I see it, and then it's just like just tears
Single
come
tear.
down.
Tear ducts, Tom? No, I'm just-
And then there's this kind of crying where you watch it, and this happened when I rewatched it for this episode. I was like,
Yes.
this. I just watched. I was just like, oh. It's like someone chokes you and punches you at the same time. It's a little sexual. in a
Pairing
weird way.
that with
It hurts.
Oh.
with
Okay.
that line from the Wolverine about holding his own heart in his hand is just, it's like, I want to hug James Mangold so bad and just be like, this thing, as a fan of Wolverine, as a fan of the X-Men, thank you for that, for all the trials and tribulations that the Fox franchise have, giving us something that it is like true, very
having something of
intelligent on a
substance.
cinematic scale is wonderful.
I would say it definitely provided some source material for characters die all the time. But in comic books, they come back. And there was in like 2017, 2018, Wolverine died, and it was like the death of Wolverine. It was like huge. It was a big deal because they were going to like retire the character for a while. And Laura Kinney, who is the current, like she's literally called Wolverine, and Wolverine now in the comic books is technically just called Logan. So like when he died, there was a lot more emotional. It wasn't like this big, huge climactic battle. It was just like after he obliterated all these people and then finally just had this somber death. But the one thing I think they can say, I think I remember this correctly, is like he died with a smile on his face. And it was kind of this like really warm feeling. And it was like adding that, like Corey said, heart. It's the heart with the heroics, but it's like mainly just the heart stuff. And
Hugh Jackman's delivery of that. I mean, he delivered that line perfect. Like you said, he does have a smile when he says it. So this is what it feels like. And they shot that scene. I think they only did one take with 2 cameras, each facing.
Get both coverage?
Yeah. Because he's like, you're talking about a highly emotional scene with a child actor, but also 17 years of Hugh Jackman's weight on this. I'm getting this shot in one take. I'm not draining them for this. And it really worked. It really worked. And no, go ahead.
Daphne Keene saying daddy. I was like, oh my God.
And you know,
kills me.
Since then, Hugh Jackman has spoken out on who he thinks should play Wolverine next.
It's her.
And
Interesting.
It's her.
Oh yeah.
He was like, oh yeah, it's her. She needs to be the next Wolverine. And I'm here for it.
I loved all the other thing about this film that was such a breath of fresh air was the acting. Just across the board. Everybody was wonderful.
I've said it multiple times. I'll say it again. I think Hugh Jackman was robbed by not being nominated for Best Actor in this film.
Oh yeah.
I think it was a daylight
fair.
robbery that all they got for this film is adapted screenplay.
The visceralness of when he is raging and like the final battle and while he's running, like the
Logan's run is what they called that moment in behind the scenes.
It's perfect. But no, it was just every single character, every single scene was just a joy to watch, just performance wise too. It wasn't acting. It was like, wow, this just feels so good.
The guy who played this guy with the robot hand. So too fucking cool for school. I love him. I thought he did that perfect villain
Holbrook.
of like, I hate him, but if he asked me to hang out and get a beer, I probably would.
Oh, I mean, I feel like he was channeling a lot of Val Kilmer from Tombstone.
Yes, dude.
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
A lot.
I
And
was just about to say that.
as I
It's very
live
Doc
breathe.
Holliday.
I was like,
And like
damn.
when he's leaving the limo and he goes, by the way, I'm a big fan. And you're just like,
I
oh,
love that.
this guy, I hate him, but like,
This guy.
how do
It
I
worked.
be him
He
also?
worked.
It's a very good Western villain, actually, if you think about it. It's like, because they're not like the meanest, baddest guy around, but they're just capable enough where it's like, all right, they got enough guns, let's take them out. But on their own, they're done. Dunzo.
Yeah.
Want to get into
He's in
favorite
a,
parts or
he's in
favorite
a
characters?
Netflix show called Narcos that he's really
I'll
good
have to
in.
check it out.
I
He's a
love
great
that
actor.
show, but
he's a really great
good
actor.
in that. So
All right, yeah, favorite character. I mean,
Favorite characters.
character.
Let's just do this. Favorite and then second favorite. No side, just bullshit.
Okay.
Just favorite and then second favorite character. I'll go first. Then I'll say that it is Hugh Jackman's Logan and then Daphne Keene's Laura.
I think I have to agree with you on that one. I was going between Charles too.
Of course, yeah. It's either
because it's one of those two. But I mean, because Patrick Stewart, you know, after again, this is a guy who's been
masterclass.
acting since he was 17, I think, on stage, and he's at this point where he's played this character for 17 years, and he's still figuring out new things he can do with it. It's just a phenomenal feat of acting strength.
Yeah,
but
big time.
I got to give it up for Daphne for coming in fresh and just attacking this role with everything she's got.
around
I mean,
these huge A-listers.
even Patrick Stewart said like she is acting with the skill set of someone who's been acting for 30 years. Like he's like doing scenes with her was so refreshing and so delightful because he's been doing scenes with kids for 20 years now, you know? So it'd have to be obviously Logan and Laura, two favorite characters.
I actually is there an echo in here? I'm gonna say the same thing. It's hard because all of the characters are really yummy. But I'm not going to echo you guys too much. They are my favorites. I will say that Charles and Caliban. I loved Caliban. But I love Stephen Merchant. He's always like, he holds a special place in my heart. Anything I see him in. But he was a wonderful character as well.
The scene with him and Logan where he's like, you don't talk to me. You don't tell me about the pain you're having. You don't even tell me that you need glasses because that bottle says ibuprofen. And he breaks it and he goes, that's my favorite mug, by the way.
Immediately. I was like, God.
This is his comedic timing.
To bring it back to Logan and Laura, their fight together at the end where he's like, get behind me.
Good.
And they just have this moment of just being in fluid tandem together was just like, let James Mangold is like, you want to watch all the audience cream their jeans? This is what they've been waiting for 17 years. Go have it. It was amazing.
Caitlin and Ollie.
Mine is same. It's Logan first and Laura second. And it's just, according to me, Hugh Jackman is the most beautiful person in the world. So
yeah,
he gets my vote. True. Just the acting prowess
according to you.
From all the way from X-Men 1 to now. I think he's always been the strongest for me. For better or worse, he's been in a majority of these X-Men movies, if not all of them. And while like other characters, like Patrick Stewart might have split the screen time with James McAvoy, we've seen him at the same character for so long, and you see that evolution in acting and in the character, and he's absolutely number one. And then Laura, for him too.
Yeah, Caitlin.
Logan is definitely tops for me, just because Hugh Jackman did such a good job of being like, I'm this angry, gruff guy, but I'm still going to stick up for the little guy, and I'm still going to take care of people even when I'm really, really mad at them. And then my second is Caliban, because
I knew it.
Yeah, I mean, how could I not?
Yeah.
It's basically like Dracula, sort of, kind of, but not really. Just like...
Basically a glorifying bloodhound.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was a truffle pig.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But
that's not right.
No, just like the whole story of how Caliban had been living and like what they'd been doing and how calm they were and how they handled everything, and he committed suicide at the end just to like make sure he wouldn't be abused as a hound dog
Went out
anymore.
like a G. Took
they
one
were
for the team.
old married couple.
Yeah,
in that scene,
they were.
which is beautifully written.
Yeah.
And they did a
Keyword
really good
son.
job with them. But those are my picks.
I mean, just really quick, just because I just really want to say this. Hugh Jackman there's a fine line when you're handling anger and rage when you're seeing it and acting, and so I've always really, really appreciated Hugh Jackman with Wolverine when in his bouts of rage or anything. Like it's just
since the first one, man.
Yeah, his rage, it never seems like, oh God, so hard to watch or anything like that. It's like it's visceral. You feel it. Like that's just something that I've really truly, truly appreciated. Like the ability to express an anger that is so rageful and not come off as like campy.
Well, even the minutia of it, like the little moments. So in the first film, he's telling Rogue to get out, and she's like, "Where will I go? I don't care. Get out." And then he turns away, and she's like, "I saved your life." And he goes, "No, you didn't," and gets back in his truck and he starts to drive off. I was like, brilliant, because she didn't save his life.
Yeah.
She doesn't know that though.
No, you didn't.
Cool.
So qualms.
Quams.
Should
I go first?
Quacks.
Let me guess. Let me Professor
Suss out
Xavier
the
this.
waters.
You don't.
You don't. You just don't.
Yeah.
You
I
don't
wish there was
qualm.
more. I wish all the deleted scenes were put into it so I could watch it that way.
How long are all the deleted scenes together?
Oh, I don't know.
Probably adds another
There's like
probably adds
7 or
another
8 of
45
them.
minutes.
Yeah, I
Wow.
would say probably between like another 20 to 40. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. Oh man.
But off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you. They're great scenes. They're all of them good.
But I think that's always a tough thing for a director because they want to look for runtime because they want to make sure it plays a lot.
Yeah.
The more screens you can play on, the better.
I highly recommend watching it with audio commentary from James Mangold as well.
Ooh.
Mm.
I'll go next.
Go
I
ahead.
have no qualms.
Okay.
No
Cool,
qualms.
cool, tight.
Except, no, I'm just kidding.
You know what? No,
Kayla,
I want.
Ali?
You know who next? I
Oh.
want Caitlin next.
Okay.
I want
I don't have
to
any.
approve. Oh fuck me.
Yeah, don't have any.
Fuck me.
You ready for that?
No, I was not ready for this.
Yeah, I bet you were.
Da-da-da-da-da-da.
No, I really don't. Like something that made me it made me sad. That's not a qualm. Like it did its job.
It made me feel emotion. Ew.
It made me feel things, and
Ew.
that was upsetting.
I didn't leave happy.
I don't seek out movies that I know are gonna gut punch me. Like, especially because it had already been spoiled for me. I was like, I don't really want to go on an emotional journey like this. If I know where it ends up, I honestly don't know if I would have sought out this movie if we weren't doing an episode on it. So it's one of those things where, like, would I have sought it out on my own? Probably not. Would I watch it if, like, a group of friends or, you know, like for this? Yeah, obviously I'm gonna watch it, and I don't have any qualms for it. It was a really great movie. It is a wonderful closure to Wolverine's story, but it's just really sad.
It's like what you said on your stream. Shout out to your stream, where sometimes you got to do things because it'll make you stronger.
For those of you that don't know, I play scary games on Twitch, and I don't like scary games. Scary games are scary, and it takes me like 10 minutes just to get through a door because I'm like scared of what's going to be on the other side. But I was talking about like how it's good to do things you don't like if you want to overcome them, because that's how you overcome them. So this movie kind of falls within that line of like, I didn't want to go on an emotional journey, but sometimes it's good to do that for yourself. So yeah, that's my little side tangent of that.
Ollie qualms?
Where do I begin? None.
All right,
Oh,
Tom.
wow. So shocked.
Yeah, I mean, like you guys echoed everything, so I don't have to say it again. But there's a lot of really great stuff in this, and yeah, it's a great ending to, you know, to the series as far as I'm concerned. I know there's a movie after it, but this is it for me.
I would say, if all honesty, if there's a qualm to be had as a discussion point, it is that Rocky mentality where it's like, these are films that teach you that you don't really have to have structure. And if you abide yourself to being like, you have to have this by this act, and you have to have that, then I think you're a fucking hack. Or
you're learning.
Can use it as a
well, then I'll say this, like,
guidelines.
drop that shit and stop trying to just formalize everything. Just understand what your characters need. You don't need a formula.
Okay.
I would say if you're looking for that shit, then that's going to be your qualm of this film, is that like certain page, it won't match certain page counts. But I have no problem with that at all, if that's other than that.
Yeah, it's to tell
Ratings.
the story the best way you can. Sometimes you got
So
to.
it's me and Josh first. I mean, no one's on their edge of the seat for mine, so mine's a 3.5.
All right.
Plus
Awesome.
a 1.5, so a 5.
Oh,
Is what the math adds up to there.
My brain.
Hey, we came here to listen, not for math.
I wasn't ready.
This is going to be controversial as fuck. But after having watched this like 3 or 4 more times in prep for this, and having watched, you know, the beginning, the X1 and X2 and a few of those, and then watching this again in Noir, superhero films, Logan, Dark Knight. Like, for me, it has surpassed.
Wow.
The Dark Knight is I think the greatest superhero film that's ever been made.
Dang.
Because it's not a superhero film. It's a film that has a superhero in it.
I'm not trying to be like, oh, well, blah, blah, blah. But I would say, like, if Logan, and for someone that like you, who like is a good avid fan of film, didn't find this film better than Dark Knight, then I think the film doesn't do a good job.
Yeah.
Because if you should try to be better than your predecessors. And Dark Knight does have like several years before. So it's like, take those lessons and build upon it and make it better.
100%.
So like, if Logan can do that, then it can do that.
I'm like a little surprised by that, but also not, because this, like, once you said it was film more than a superhero movie, it made me think of Fast Color, like, immediately.
Yeah, in many ways,
and that's
absolutely.
what was like, oh yeah, that's
Wait for Unbreakable,
that's Corey's
baby.
thing.
Yep.
Wait for Unbreakable. But I would say also, Thomas to Batman as Corey is to X-Men. It's like, you know.
Yeah.
Well,
That's true. Sorry,
Well,
shout out
fair
to anyone
point.
who votes for me on an X-Men Guess That Grump, because that's playing with fire.
I
right
mean,
there.
just wait till we do the Apocalypse episode.
X3.
And there you go.
Or the Apocalypse.
I'll probably be more forgiving than everyone. Maybe not. I
So
did
who's
fall
next?
asleep twice.
Josh?
I believe it
Josh.
is me, and I really thought long and hard. This is a 5.
Yeah.
It's
That sounds very long and hard.
yeah, very long and hard. Long hard 5. It's one of those movies that I can watch multiple times, and it never gets old. And then there's always nuances to find, and there's always other things to notice. There's dialogue to hear differently. There's even lighting choices to see differently. And, I noticed the soundtrack or something like that. The score, like there's always going to be something that you're like, oh. So
Yeah.
I dig
Next step, Josh, you just got to buy a 2 foot tall
Well, shoot.
movie theater window poster, and then right on track.
Or if you were really a fan, then you would just mutton chop it up.
I loved the kids cutting
Where's
his
my
hair,
razor?
by the way.
No, I'm just kidding.
No, you need safety
Very
scissors.
funny.
You need safety scissors. Who's next?
About 5 there.
It is going to be Ali or you.
Ollie, go. No, wait,
For-
no. Okay, never mind. Go ahead.
For what?
Oh, I was
For
gonna say, go
rating.
for your rating.
Oh, I thought. Oh no, I didn't. I know I didn't get my.
No, you didn't.
No.
But aha, here we are. Yes, you're here.
My rating, is absolutely a 5.
Yeah.
No ends or buts.
I think I know how this episode's going to go.
Mine's a 4.9 plus 1.
All right, there we go.
Point
So
one.
So
I was going to say, so
5.9.
5.9, can we do that?
Yeah.
I give
So
this movie a
6.0.
1000.
I give it 6 claws.
Josh, no.
What did I want to give What did I want to give 5.1? I forget. Was it Endgame?
I
think
fucking
so.
know.
If I can't do it, you can't.
Probably.
The only guests are allowed to do it because Bonnie's the one that made that tradition.
Yeah. Kaylin.
So I mean, for me, it's a 5. It's a 5.
Yeah, Kaylin.
That's a 5 from me.
Yeah,
though.
that's what I thought.
Ooh.
So
So
we're all
you
You
said
said
no
last, so
grump.
you are the grump.
This
That's
is-
how it. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, but I mean, she
No.
didn't say she liked the movie,
is
so
not
she is
how
the
that
grump
works.
immediately.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 5 for everybody? Is
So
that
everyone
what
who
it is?
guessed
Yeah, it's a
Caitlin,
5.
you were right. Guess that grump or guess.
So Kaylin, are you
Yeah,
going to go
technically-
out and watch?
I'm both the lowest and the highest
No,
score
there's
at the
no
same
grump.
time.
You
There's
should go out and
no
watch
grump.
the
All right,
Fistful of
then. In that
Dollars
case.
trilogy, the Good, Bad, and the Ugly trilogy, because that's probably some of the premier example of a Western. If this has opened the world for more Westerns for you.
Go watch Shane.
I would also say, I'm going to say this. And this is, you want controversial, Corey? You want
Yeah,
controversial?
I do actually.
This did better Wolf and Cub than Mandalorian ever could.
Yes.
Ever could.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fair.
Yeah.
100%.
Fair.
And it did it in an eighth of the time.
It did an eighth of the time, and you actually gave a shit about
generations of it
anybody.
kind of together.
Yeah.
I will say that this also, like, personally anyway, I watched a lot of spaghetti westerns with my dad. So
There we go.
this was like an extra little nostalgia nugget of like, oh man, they watched westerns together.
There you go.
They went through all
Yeah.
this stuff together. Like,
Kaylin, now you got to watch The
so good.
Wolverine
the Wolverine.
and then watch this again, knowing everything you know about that film in this.
You'll
it's
notice a
gonna
few
hurt.
things. Only a few.
Yeah, it's
It's gonna
You want to know what's
hurt.
going to hurt, Caitlin?
hurt.
Watching X-Men Origins, that's going to hurt.
Oh yeah, I saw that in
It's like-
theaters
Probably
in
not
New
the
York.
same reasons though.
I will say this. You're going to love this. Cutting a
No,
ladder. Cutting a
This-
ladder like this.
in X-Men Origins, don't
It's great.
watch that movie. Skip that one.
I watched
Anyways.
Oh, boy.
For full disclosure, I did watch all 3 movies in preparation for this back to back. So I
Good.
know
Oh
that
wow!
watched-
scene is
I watched
very
X-
fresh.
I watched X1.
And also somehow the claws in we'll do this some other time. The claws in Origins look way worse than the first movie, which was like almost 10 years prior.
It's like how
Somehow,
how
I don't know.
how
Anyway,
They had 50
that's our
million.
episode on Logan, y'all.
I do want to say 2 things real quick. This is like probably one of the greatest films that have superheroes in it of all time. And as we speak, unless they do a remaster with the same exact cast and same exact writers and directors. But I will say, on top of that, this is coming from the end of a character from an actor that when the media first hit, not everyone loved it. And also when they saw the claws, all the comic book fanboys fucking hated it.
Because it didn't come from the top.
Didn't come from the
his
fucking
knuckles.
like the top. It came from the actual in between.
Oh, inside.
And I'm
More
going to
bleeding.
say this, like, I will say this, and I want to make this a blanket statement where it's like, stop kind of judging things for what they are and actually try to meet it where it is.
Hmm.
and then
As
you'll
an X-Men fan,
yeah.
This makes sense. This, from like an evolution, if you're going to ground it a little more,
I will
made
say
a lot
this
of
from an
sense.
I'll say
anatomic
this.
way. Like
That's what I
from
mean.
To that,
anatomy,
Tom,
like
I'll say like as the first, as maybe one of the only Marvel movies, maybe might watch another one before the next phase of AMCU we start, consuming and covering on the show. I do want to go into the MCU knowing that like, to me, the MCU is just another, or, the film canons are just another run. Like I've said before, like, and that's what I want to go moving forward. Like I want them, I'm taking that statement a step further and saying like, they now have, after the last 11 years, they now have the creative license to create canon with these movies. So I'm excited for them to really go off the rails and don't worry about like pleasing the fans. And I encourage them to like change things up and
I would say this: if they went with over the palm fucking or over the wrist fucking claws, like I'll fucking watch it. I'll be like, let's see how they do it. And I mean, like, if you want something that's comic book accurate, read the goddamn comic books.
Yeah.
Like they're still there. They're still there. They're still good.
Still one of the best shots, though. Yeah. Right at the camera. Oh.
So
nice.
Anyway, that's our Logan
Sing us
episode,
out.
y'all.
Awesome. Everybody at home, thank you so much for listening. Let us know what you thought of Logan. Do reach out on our Discord. We love talking to y'all on there. If you're watching the video, Corey is putting his poster in his frame. Do remember to check out the Capeless Crusaders episode 144. That is about the comic book Old Man Logan. But yeah, thanks for listening or watching wherever you are. We really appreciate it. We love you all. When you get a chance to, please stop by, rate and review us wherever you listen. But yeah, that's it. That is our Logan episode. Thank you so much. We love you. You know the drill. As always, nerd on.
Nerd on.
Ending broadcast.